So today I'm going to be looking at crisis management, just a very quick sort of overview of the key points that you might need to think about in your current crisis management procedure, or if you don't have one, what sort of requirements are there and why we have one. So like I say, just a quick sort of half an hour overview today, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So just a tiny bit of background about me. So I'm currently the TAC chair at SALSA. I'm also I've worked in the food industry for about 28 years now, mainly in manufacturing, but also working for certification bodies and carrying out audits, etc. At the moment, I'm a consultant. I'm also a trainer, and I'm also a part-time lecturer at Reading University. So I look after sort of food safety, food quality aspects there. So these are today's topics. I'm going to be going through an introduction to crisis management. What's a crisis? Your responsibility regarding legislation and the law, SALSA's requirements. We'll then look at what's involved in a management procedure and what sort of processes would you need to have. We'll look at why you'd review your system, some top tips, and how to keep up to date with what's going on, what sort of alerts are out there, what's happening in the food industry, and a summary, and then following that we'll have a Q&A session. Okay, so we have here, I'll just put an introduction. You may have seen these. We've got, obviously these are both types of food poisoning bacteria, just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that would be classed as a crisis. So you've got, in France last year, actually, there were some headlines made. There was a botulism death from a restaurant where they were actually sort of preserving their own fish type products from sardines. And unfortunately, 16 diners who fell ill. And there was a lady that unfortunately died as a result of eating product that wasn't properly preserved. This year, we've had E. coli outbreak throughout the summer, actually, which they believe was to do with some of the salad items. However, we haven't had further confirmation of that. But again, it was a serious outbreak. We've also had listeria this summer as well. But generally, sort of most weeks, there is some crisis for some manufacturing business or restaurant that you would see in the news or on the Food Standards Agency alerts. This is really just to give you an overview of how this is very current and really important for businesses that you have this procedure in place. And like I say, these are both food poisoning types, but actually your crisis could be a number of different things, which we'll talk about. So why should we have a system in place? Now, I've highlighted in red the really top line important points. So firstly, you're protecting consumer safety. The products that you produce, you have a responsibility to make sure that they're safe. They're not going to make people ill. You're complying with legal requirements. You're also complying with standards. So your SALSA standard, maybe you've got BRCGS as well. Again, you're complying with those. The other aspects are, if you've got a system in place, it means you've got something which you can train your staff. So in that event of a crisis, your staff know exactly what to do. You can mitigate costs. So again, having a system in place means that hopefully in this situation, hopefully you'll never be in this situation, but if you are, you can help to reduce things like loss of product, transport costs, fines and prosecution. You can show your due diligence, loss of sales, and also understand, how to evaluate what's happened and review your processes. Minimize your reputation impact. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on the communication side. Maintain your consumer trust. So your consumers, particularly if you're third party accredited, you've got your SALSA, your customers know that you've got a system in place. Should there be a crisis, they know that you have procedures in place and they have that customer confidence in your systems. It also means that you've got a quick response. So imagine that you're in this situation, that you have a food poisoning incident. You want to make sure that you can trace your product, what to do very quickly. You don't want to be running around, not really sure where your product's gone to, not sure really where it is in the process, your supply chain. You need to understand quickly who you need to contact and do your traceability exercise. It also, the other thing is to check your insurance covers costs for any incident. So what is a crisis? So, I mean, I highlighted also a couple of cases of food poisoning. I'm sure that many of you have seen other cases in the news, but it could be contamination. It could be, metal product, perhaps a piece of equipment has broken down and you've got metal contamination in your product. It could be something from the supplier. It could be sabotage. So there was an incident last year where a number of products were purposefully contaminated by a disgruntled employee, where they put metal pieces and sort of blue plastic in the product, and they did that post metal detection. So obviously that wouldn't have been picked up. So again, it's not just food poisoning, although those are really the cases that get the most headlines. It can be a number of other things that you consider a crisis. Basically, any critical event that can be described as a threat, sort of unanticipated incident. So again, you don't predict that you're going to have a crisis. They often happen at the most inconvenient times. And again, you don't necessarily know what your crisis may be. So that's why it's so important to have a procedure in place that you can refer back to in this situation. From a legislation side, so from the law, basically, we've got a lot of areas here that as a food business that you need to be aware of. Certainly from a safety side, as I said, as a food business, you shouldn't be putting unsafe food or feed on the marketplace. And as soon as you realise that actually something may be unsafe, you have a responsibility to make sure that you trace and recall or withdraw that product. You need to have sort of transparency. So you need to be able to know when to inform the appropriate authorities if you believe that your food is not safe. And they will obviously help also track the recall. Emergency. You need to be able to immediately initiate procedures. So again, if you've got this process in place, it's about knowing that it's effective and efficient, so you can very quickly, because you want to stop the tap. If you know that basically you have product which is unsafe, you want to, as quickly as possible, stop people consuming that product. It's about also regularly reviewing critical points in your processes, so things like your HACCP that you'd have in place. Ensure that your controls are appropriate, especially post incident. Maybe go back and have a look at those, and we'll talk about that in the review section. But also about making sure that you're cooperating with the Food Standards Agency, and again, your third-party schemes such as SALSA. So from a main food business responsibilities, we've got your crisis management procedure. So this is your system, your written documented system that you've got in place. And it sort of demonstrates that you can effectively identify or trace your products and recall or withdraw it. And we'll look at, how you decide which to do. So you're talking about making sure that unsafe product is no longer on the marketplace for consumption. So in order for this to be successful, an effective traceability system is required. So the two go hand in hand, really, your crisis management procedure and your traceability system. And we talk about one step forwards and one step back. And again, I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So systems in place need to be quick and effective to be able to do your trace and work out where it's gone to. And also, understand perhaps if there's suppliers that you need to contact. You also need your method to quickly inform local authorities, customers and suppliers and SALSA. So this is really about your communication side and having up-to-date contact lists of people to contact in, emergency situations. It could be out of hours, it could be you're running a shift and you realise that there's an issue. It could be late at night. So again, it's having that 24-hour emergency contacts here. So if we look at SALSA requirements, so section 3, we've got here about your traceability. So section 3.3 is your traceability, and section 3.4 is your managing incidents. So again, they're next to each other. You know, they are very sort of interrelated. So the SALSA requirement, we've got a procedure shall be given clear guidance on the response to any incident which may compromise the safety and legality of the food and/or legality of the food. So we're talking here again about your documented procedure within your quality management system, and that's something then that you're able to train people and refer back to in the case of an incident. The second part here, which is really important, we've got about informing SALSA. So if you're in the middle of your crisis, you've decided that you've got to recall or withdraw a product, you need to be informing SALSA within 3 working days and send a summary of the subsequent investigation. So what's happened as a result of your investigation? What's the cause? What's your corrective actions been, etc. So what are the key benefits of having a crisis management procedure? So the one thing is that actually, like I said, crisis situation is unpredictable. So I used to work on a crisis line, and actually I would say 9 times out of 10, I would get called on a Friday evening. A company had taken a while to investigate it, decided whether they needed to recall or not. And often it's towards the end of the week. It could be a weekend shift has happened. So having that system and procedure in place that everyone's familiar with is really going to help you be prepared in that situation. Like I said, it's never going to be maybe in Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, when everybody's there. It could happen actually at weekend when you've got a limited shift. People might be on holiday, key staff on holiday. So it's about understanding the background to this. Who would you contact? Who would you contact of your suppliers or your customers over a weekend or late at night? Have you got their contact details? Does everyone know what to do? It enables you to act fast. As I said, staff are trained and know what to do. So there's no panic, people wondering what to do in that situation. It helps protect your consumers because you're going to be able to withdraw the product very quickly and inform the people that need to know. So there's no further consumption of food which may be unsafe. It also ensures effective product can be identified and able to be withdrawn or recalled quickly. And as we'll talk about later, that's one of the things that we would recommend, that you have a practice, that you go through a traceability exercise. You perhaps go through a mock recall exercise just to see and look at your processes and make sure that they're as streamlined as possible. So it prevents further consumption of affected product. Obviously, this meets your legal requirements, having this procedure in place. It meets SALSA requirements and any other third-party requirements you may have. They will all have about having a crisis management procedure in place. And it also forms part of your quality management system. So what is your written procedure, or what should it include? So obviously it's going to be, it should be quite detailed. So almost like a work instruction, it will tell you what to do in the event of a crisis. So it's something that someone can follow easily in that situation. So it should include the following. So your team, who is your crisis management team? Who is going to be responsible for making the decision on understanding, the traceability side, who the customers are, informing the customers, making the decision on whether the product should be recalled or withdrawn. So that's your key team. And think about job roles from all areas of the business. So you might want purchasing involved to understand the supply side. You might want customer services involved, certainly your technical team, your technical manager or quality manager, and certainly your ops production manager or whoever's looking after the production side too. So try and have a variety of people on this team because they'll all have different roles and responsibilities. You also need to have details of your traceability, how that works, and the types of documents you might need to pull together, or perhaps you've got something on online on a sort of electronic system. And again, just details of how you might find the information you need quickly. The decision tree, which I'll go through later. So that will detail on how you would decide whether to withdraw or recall a product. And here's another key point. So your list of contacts, including emergency and out of hours. So your key customers, the local authorities, SALSA, making sure that you've got all of those things in one place. So this document is really sort of the Bible of where to go to for all of this key information. Again, it's going to speed up your process and help with training. So any other customer requirements. So again, you might have specific customers that will say, in this particular situation, you need to inform them as well. You might need to inform certain people. They might request a particular way in that you inform them. It could be by mobile phone. It could be by email. It could be even a WhatsApp group that you have. So there might be different ways that customers have given you specific requirements. You also need to start your investigation. And again, it will list sort of the process, whether it's testing, which laboratories you might use, or any other investigations, audits, etc. The documentation that you're going to require. And then at the end, you need a review. So once you've gone through the incident, you're reviewing, basically, there's sort of two sides to it, really. What corrective action might be required to prevent a reoccurrence? Do you need to review your HACCP? Is it to do with training? Was it sabotage? Was there an issue with the supplier's ingredients? And also, did the process work? Did your procedure work? And if not, then perhaps look at reviewing the process itself and maybe amending it and some further staff training. And also about including an annual test of the system. So again, most third parties will include that as part of a requirement. So making sure you've tested the system, you know that it works, you know that you can trace a product and that everyone knows what to do. From a process side, we have crisis situation. So obviously the situation occurs, you're gathering your team together, you carry out your traceability exercise. Then you can decide whether you're going to recall or withdraw. You need to do the traceability first to understand actually whether it's gone to customers or whether it's still in your warehouses and sort of storage and distribution. Communicate. So again, we'll talk about that a bit more. Investigate, conclude, or the recall withdrawal, and then review your corrective action. So your team. So as I've said, you'd have a number of people within your team. They all have different roles and have different expertise and knowledge of the business. So you need a senior management team to make the decisions. You also need sales customer services. They might be contacting customers. And you've got your operations side. So people who can pull together the documentation you need for your traceability, stop the use of a particular ingredient, perhaps stop production, even, investigate, maybe look at the equipment, etc. So you need people from the operations side as well. So it's a combination of a number of different areas. So here, this is actually from the Food Standards Agency. They've got a really good guide, and it helps with the decision tree here. So there's a link here, and I believe it will be sent these later. So again, it helps you to understand, basically, once you've decided that food's unsafe, what actions you need to take. So if the product has basically gone to a customer, you decide whether it's a recall or withdrawal. If it's actually not gone to customers, then it's a withdrawal. If it's actually gone to the final consumers, maybe it's gone to a retailer or it's in a shop or a catering unit, then you actually need to have a recall, which is you need to have the product back or tell them to stop consuming the product. Ensure that the product is no longer available for consumption. So for the traceability side, talked about one step forwards and one step back. So basically what we're looking at is right through your supply chain, from your ingredients coming in, where those ingredients have gone. So you've received those goods, where are they? Have you used them in production? Your finished products, if they've been dispatched, and going to customers. So the one step forward is going forward to your customers where your product has gone. One step back is looking at your ingredients and who supplied them to you, where they came from. And the reason for this is so that you can have a traceability going either way. If you had customers that contacted you with complaints, or you realised that there was a problem with the product, you could go back and work out okay, when we produce this, it might affect other customers. Who are the suppliers of those ingredients? And again, it could be actually that your supplier contacts you and says, we've supplied you with a product that we need to recall, and you need to understand where you've used that product, or in fact, if you have used it yet, where has it gone? If you've used it, who's it been sent to? Has it been consumed? Is it still actually within your domain? Is it within your goods in area or frozen storage, etc.? So it's about working out both ways the traceability of where the ingredients or the unsafe product might be. From a communication side, what these 3 points are really key. So who you're communicating to, what you're communicating, and how you're going to communicate to them. And it might be different, this particular put at the end, how, depending on the customers that you have and the agreements you might have in place. So for example, who you know that you need to contact, the SALSA, you know that you need to contact your customers, and you know that you need to contact the Food Standards Agency. This is very clear. What are you going to communicate? You need to tell them what product's affected, batch codes, product name. You might even know when they had it delivered, any specific details, and also what do you want them to do? If it's a recall, do you want them to dispose of the product? Do you want them to bring it back to store? Just have clear in your mind what it is you want the consumer to do with the product. Are you going to go and collect it from them? Do you need it back for further testing? And how? So are you going to email them? Are you going to follow that up with a phone call? Are you sending text messages? Are you putting out a statement on your website? Again, you're putting an alert information to the FSA so that it can also advertise it on their website. Are you putting posters in your windows of your shop, or are you putting notices in your restaurants or to your customers who are going to restaurants or farm shops or whatever wherever people are consuming your product? So how are you going to inform them that there's an issue with a particular product? From an investigation side, we've got, obviously you'd want to look back at your suppliers. Perhaps, there was an issue there. Have a look at your own site. It depends on obviously what the crisis is. If it's, say, for example, a foreign body contamination, was there a failure in equipment somewhere, or did something come in with the ingredient? Is it potentially sabotage? What's happened? So look at the root cause analysis. Check your documentation. So check that everything was okay. Your cleaning, your equipment maintenance, your HACCP records, temperature, etc., especially if it's a food poisoning issue. So check all your documentation. This is your due diligence, that you did everything possible to prevent a product being contaminated. And checking your testing results. If you sent product it could be you sent it for forensic analysis, if it's a foreign body, or maybe you sent it for micro testing or chemical testing, if there's a chemical, contamination problem. This can be going on in the background. So as soon as you've identified your traceability side, you can start your investigation. So some people of the team can already be starting this side of it, while other people of the team are starting with the communication side. So this can be going on at the same time. As I said, your communication, really you're looking at all these areas, local authorities, stakeholders as well, third bodies, suppliers, customers, and internal team. So let your internal team know about it, not just the crisis management team. Let your staff know about it, give them a communication of, if they get queries from the public or other people they know, what information is acceptable for them to tell people, what you want them to tell people, and explain. You might have to close production, you might have to have other investigations, and so they know what's happening. So records, as part of your due diligence anyway, you should be having records of all the things that you're doing as part of your HACCP, your temperature controls, your goods coming in, making sure you're recording batch codes of ingredients, suppliers, supplier approval, etc. So the importance of keeping these records, though, is to ensure that you can trace a product. It may be that you've got a product which has got a reasonable length of life, and actually you've got a complaint about a product that maybe you made a few months ago. So you want to be able to go back to your records of those dates and find that information. Also keep a track of your communication, who you've communicated to, how, what response you've had. Make sure that they have responded, they've received your communications. If you're contacting customers directly, tracking your investigation process. And also at the end, when you've got your review, again, recording that. What have you done as your proactive, sort of preventative for future? What have you done to stop reoccurrence here? And who have you communicated this to? So following your review, it's important to check not just the cause of the crisis, but all the systems in place. So as I said sort of previously, have a think about what worked, get the team together. Did the team know what to do? Were they fully trained? Was there anything that came up that you hadn't anticipated you need to write back into your procedure and retrain? What didn't work? Was there anything that didn't work? Did you have problems with your traceability? Did you find problems with the system that you had online or paper? Find all that information you need. Is there something you could change to help in future? What improvement actions might be required? It might be there are none, and that actually your review reveals that actually everyone knew what to do. You were trained very well. The procedure worked, and that's brilliant. But if not, look at reflective. Okay, could we do something different to improve it? It could be your contacts, for example. Maybe some of your key contacts are no longer the key contacts, and it's about updating the contact list. Reviewing your HACCP, is it still effective? Maybe there's a supplier review required. Perhaps this was initiated from a supplier and you might need to go back and review that or re-audit that supplier. Traceability, were you able to achieve full traceability within a reasonable timescale? Remembering that when you've got this situation, you want to prevent any further consumption, particularly as we saw in some of the initial sort of articles that actually, for example, food poisoning, it could be extremely serious, can be fatal in some cases. You want to prevent this being, a serious food poisoning incident. You want to make sure that you can trace a product very quickly. Were you able to achieve that? So we've got some top tips here. So things just quick reminders. Ensure the procedure describes the difference between a product withdrawal or a product recall. And obviously, like I said, there's very different. So withdrawal is very much that you've contacted the warehouse, it's not gone to the final customer. You can make sure that the warehouse has their own procedure to put product on hold and quarantine, so it's not further into the supply chain, it's not delivered to the customers. Or a product recall, where actually you are contacting the final customer and saying, actually, we've delivered this product to you. It could be on your shelves. You might have served this product in a meal, or it could be, in your retail shop. Actually, we want you to take that product off the shelves, and you need to put out a customer notification asking and telling people what action you expect from them. Keep a copy of managing incidents procedure at home and at work, because again, we've said that sometimes this can happen out of the hours. So making sure that people know what to do if they're off, if it's a weekend, and actually there's a smaller shift on, again, making sure that people know who the nominated duty person is. Writing a detailed procedure for an incident that hasn't yet happened is difficult. So a series of prompts to help decide on what action to take. So some of the things that we've got in this presentation, for example, is it a recall or a withdrawal, or things that should be in your sort of checklist of things to do. Also check if there's other sites involved. So maybe if you're manufacturing product from a few different sites, again, making sure that everyone knows what to do. You might want to include incidents where quality has been badly affected, so not just safety. So again, if you feel that actually the product's not been made to recipe, something's happened to the quality of the product, again, that also may involve a recall or withdrawal of product. So keeping up to date. So here there's a link for the Food Standards Agency. So you can go on and set yourself up for news alerts. And I get these daily, I would say. I sometimes get quite a few daily. And it would just give you an idea of what's going on in the food industry. So these are all sort of incidents that have been reported to the Food Standards Agency, and they send out alerts. Sometimes, obviously, there also are public notices as well if it's a serious incident. But on here you can get information, and it could be that actually there's information about suppliers that supply you. This might be interesting for you to then look at your products that you have or contact that supplier. But again, it's just interesting for you to keep up to date. So you can do that if on the link. Also, the Food Standards Agency has a really good sort of product recall and withdrawal guide, which is very, very easy to understand and read, very simple in the way it's explained. It's great for training material. It helps. It has the decision tree. They also have check sheets on there, things like communication, who you've informed. And again, you can use those as templates if you don't already have something like that in place. They're quite easy and easy to use. So as a summary, the key thing here is preventative measures as much as you can. And like I say, it's sometimes unpredictable. So having all these things in place as part of your quality system are going to help reduce the likelihood of an incident. So supplier contingency, if you have a problem with your suppliers, that you've got someone else you can quickly onboard and use instead that you've approved. Your supplier approval, that actually you've got a supplier that you trust and you're confident in is going to supply you safe product. And also if they have an incident, that actually they know how to contact you and in the appropriate way and time. Procedures. So again, having those in place, making sure that it covers all the aspects you need and that you've tested this system. Review and improve it. So every year, test your system, have a look at the staff training if you've changed anything. Make sure you improve it if you can. Keep up to date with alerts. What's going on in the food industry? For example, like the E. coli, have a look at, would your products be affected by this? Is there a supplier involved that actually maybe supplies you? Staff training is essential. So making sure everyone really knows what to do in the event of a crisis. Keep up-to-date contact lists. So again, regularly review these, especially including emergency out of hours, particularly with your customers. Obviously, people move around and change jobs, and so sometimes you may not have up-to-date details. So again, just while you're doing your review, testing the system, check those as well. So remember, crises don't always happen at convenient times. So it could be out of hours, could be on a weekend, which is important to make sure that everyone is trained on what to do, those key people who are there in those sort of out of hours or on a weekend in the evenings, etc., to make sure that you have a quick response. Okay, so that's the end of the webinar regarding the crisis management today. So we have got some other training coming up in the next few months, which you can go and have a look on the website for further information. So in October, we've got Making the Most of Your Pest Management Programme. We've also got about understanding food micro-testing and interpreting results. We have allergen management, and we've got a further session, which is much more detailed to sort of supplement some of the key points I've talked about today, but it's in a much more detailed about traceability and crisis management. So thank you for joining us today.